We are excited to be here this evening to share with you one of our gem jamming sessions about spinels and garnets. And this is one of a series of programs run by Tanja and myself. Tanja is the founder of JDMIS and has been in the jewelry industry for 40 years, looking after all aspects of the jewelry industry. She's been in design, in manufacturing, in retail, in gemmology, in all of these different areas. And today she's going to share with us some interesting insights into these two interesting gemstones that you don't hear so much about, and unlike all of the other very popular gemstones. This is part of a series of short sessions that we're running in conjunction with the National Design Center, and they are on a variety of topics. So we have things like gem spotlights, like you're here for this evening, if you want to know more about gemstones. We also have some really interesting sessions on how jewelry is designed, how jewelry is manufactured, if you want to see what happens behind the scenes. And finally, we have some interesting things. So sometimes things that we wouldn't normally talk about, but that you might have heard of and you might want to get into a little more deeply. Things like, how to buy a diamond, or should I buy a synthetic diamond or a natural diamond? What's the difference? Some of these sorts of things that are more like debates where there's no right or wrong answer, but you might want to hear some of the different sides of the story. And so all of these things are short half-hour sessions that we're excited to be sharing with you here at the National Design Center. Now, before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the JDMIS, the Jewelry Design and Management International School. The fastest and easiest way for me to do that is with a short video so that you can see what it is that we do here. And then I'm going to hand over to Tanja so that we can learn more about spinels and garnets.
Since 2007, the Jewelry Design and Management International School has given thousands of people the confidence to create quality jewelry. Established in Singapore, in the heart of Southeast Asia, JDMIS has conducted courses for some of the world's most distinguished jewelry companies, as well as passionate amateurs and those ready for a career in the jewelry industry. Specializing in the jewelry arts, JDMIS provides exceptional education in jewelry design, fabrication, gemmology, and business. The tools that students receive from JDMIS on their first day have traveled with many along the road of jewelry making success. Tanja Sadow, founder of the JDMIS, is an award-winning jewelry designer and renowned jewelry educator with over 30 years of experience training the jewelry industry. Tanja, with her team of expert jewelry artists and instructors, created the JDMIS curriculum to be comprehensive yet flexible. Small class sizes, personalized attention, and an unmatched support network ensure that each participant leaves with the knowledge, skill, and confidence to succeed in the jewelry industry. Designed for the jewelry trade, training at JDMIS is fast-paced and packed with useful practical information. But with a diverse range of participants, courses are also great fun. Learning at their own pace, participants study the latest information about gemstones and jewelry styles. They gain confidence using the best of traditional and contemporary techniques and learn how to apply each of these skills to their businesses. All JDMIS courses are completely modular, and they can be taken individually. For each skill they learn, students receive a certificate and can combine these skills to receive a comprehensive diploma qualification. Graduates in more than 42 countries delight friends and relatives with their unique creations. Many graduates showcase their pieces online, and JDMIS's brightest stars operate their own successful retail jewelry businesses, designing and producing exquisite jewelry that enchants their customers. The possibilities are endless. What will you create?
Okay, fantastic. Welcome everyone. Can you all hear me at the back? Yes? Okay, fantastic. Now, I have been given strict instructions to sit on this chair and not to move. because I tend to move too much and I get off the screen. So hello everyone who's joining us online. Tonight we're going to talk about spinels and garnets. Now, is that anyone's favorite? Yes? Oh, good. Which one, spinel or garnet? Spinel, very good. So spinel is actually very up and coming. A lot of people are discovering spinels right now. Garnets have been around forever. But why did I put these two together? This is a very good question. Both of them have been around for a long time, and both of them have been misrepresented in certain ways, and they haven't been appreciated as much as they can be appreciated. Because when you think of garnets, for example, most people think of just a dark red stone, the birthstone for January, and that's basically what people think. But today, garnets come in every color you can imagine. Some very exciting colors, by the way. And we have garnets and spinels or other that also come in lots of different colors, which people don't realize. So let's take a quick look and see what we're going to do. We'll start with spinel. We'll talk a little bit about the history. We will talk about important things like color and clarity and cut and carat weight. And then I will kind of inject a little bit of pricing here and there. The pricing part is really tough because it depends where you are in the world. It depends, you know, what exact color it is. So it's not quite that easy. I can show you a price, but then you're going to find lots of different prices online. So it'll just give you an idea of certain prices. And we'll talk about the sources as well, where they are found now. So if we talk about the history, so actually spinel has a very, very long history, but people don't realize it because ever since it was found, it was mistaken for ruby. And many of you have heard what has happened about this is because spinel actually comes from exactly the same mines that ruby comes from. So both are found together, and they both can look red, and therefore the majority of the red ones that were found were thought to be ruby, and they were called ruby. And that's because years and years ago, we obviously did not have the equipment to be able to test the gemstones properly. So we wouldn't have been able to know. So there's 4 very important gems in history that were found that were misrepresented as ruby, and they are rather spectacular. So we're going to look at each one of those rather quickly. So let's talk a moment about, first of all, the hope. And the hope is 50.13 carats. It's a very beautiful red. This was found in Tajikistan, which not a lot of people think of certain countries for certain gemstones, but a lot of people think of the Burmese spinels. Now, something coming from Burma usually does have a premium on it. It's quite possible. Like, for example, a Burmese ruby would be more expensive than a Madagascan ruby, even though maybe it's not as beautiful as the Madagascan, but it will have that premium because of where it's coming from. Some places that are not so well known. These wonderful and magnificent, because a 50 carat is not something very easy to find. Now this one was called the Hope because it was in a collection that belonged to Henry Philip Hope, who also was the one who named the Hope diamond. And it is a very spectacular stone due to its size, and it was found quite a long time ago. It wasn't found very early on, but it was also thought to be a ruby when it was found. You know, we have to remember that it wasn't until the late 1800s and even early 1900s that we had the right equipment to be able to understand what the chemical composition and crystal structure of these minerals is. So in that regard, it's no wonder that we had so many mistakes made. This one here is called the Black Prince's Ruby. Now, for those of you who came a few talks ago, we talked about ruby in great detail. And this one was brought up. Why? Because it's in the crown jewels in England. And in fact, even though it's called the Black Prince's Ruby, that big red stone right in the center is a spinel. And that little tiny one that is inset into the spinel is actually, yes, a ruby. But they thought it was a ruby for centuries, and it wasn't until an insurance elapsed that somebody had to go into the Tower of London, they had to actually take all the equipment and do the testing, that not just this one, but another one that was in the crown jewels was discovered to be a spinel. And initially it was shock and horror. Oh dear, you know, could the value of the crown jewels be less? But how could it be less when you have 170 carat, beautiful color spinel? I mean, we don't have many of those in the world. For a stone to be over 5 carats and red today in spinel is already rare. So no, it did not lose any value at all. And this is the other one that was in the crown jewels. It's called a Timor ruby. And again, it's not a ruby, it is a spinel. It's always been a spinel. It's 361 carats. This one's exceptional. And it's also from Tajikistan. So this one was actually found in the late 1300s. And it's from this area, the Timor region. And it was belonging to some Maharajas and the people who ruled in those days, and it would pass from one ruler to another, and of course there were wars, and sometimes when there were wars it changed hands and it went to different people. There's a little bit of a sad story behind this one. The Maharaja that owned it, or the emperor if you call him that in those days, he was assassinated and it went to his son, but his son was only 5 years old. And so the son didn't really appreciate it as much as he didn't know anything about gemstones. Of course, they kept it for him. But at that time, what happened was the British came into India. And when the British came into India and took over, they confiscated this. They confiscated the Kohinoor, which is one of the biggest diamonds. And they also took the young prince also to England and left him there. And sadly, he never got to really know his country and get back to his country because he lived in Europe for the rest of his life. But what an amazing gem, and it has inscriptions on it. And those inscriptions are basically 5 names of the emperors or Mughals or important people that owned it previously. So where did it end up? It ended up with Queen Victoria in England, and it stayed in the crown jewels, and it is still in the crown jewels today. And it's quite a lovely piece. It's considered to be very politically controversial. So they don't wear it that often. You don't see them wearing it. And why is that? Because a lot of people today are requesting it to be returned to India. And so I think that we don't know yet what's going to happen with that, but I think that the British are still having a firm hold on it because it is a very special piece, which has been in England for such a long time. All right, what else? We've got Catherine the Great Spinel. It's the one on the top of this beautiful crown, 398 carats. Another huge, absolutely huge one. This one's from Afghanistan. And it's still there in Russia. It's in the Imperial Crown. And basically from about 1762, it has been enjoyed by royalty, and it is still enjoyed today by royalty. So what happens is that these very special and very large, unique gems are typically found only in royal collections. It's not like we're going to find something that big today, unfortunately. And what else do we have here? We have the factors. Now, the factors are important, and we've given a couple of very interesting talks on certain topics, like clarity was one topic, and of course, color is another topic. Color is an entire topic that takes half an hour just to discuss by itself. But I want to get into color a little bit because color is the most important feature of the 4 Cs. It is far above and beyond any of the others 4 colored stones. And this material, the spinel, was found in red to look like ruby, it was found in blue to look like sapphire, and it even came in colorless to look like diamond. So that's the interesting thing, is that many people know the red, they know maybe the colorless, and they know the blue, but they don't know the other colors. Now, the colorless is actually fairly rare. Not everybody has a colorless natural spinel. we have tons and tons of synthetic colorless spinel. And that's because it's not difficult to make, and they've been making it for many years. And especially in places like the US, a lot of the high school rings are actually made from synthetic spinel. And they can make them in triplets, which they add colors to. They can make it look like any birthstone. So there are lots and lots of them. So basically, because of the red and the blue, because it looks like ruby, because it looks like sapphire, this beautiful gem has always been called an imitation or an imposter, which is kind of sad because it is a beauty in its own right. And today we are beginning to really understand it better and enjoy it better. Now, this one here says they're affordable under 1 carat, okay, which is about 200 to 500 per carat today. And that's good color and reasonable clarity. We'll talk about clarity in a minute because the clarity is in fact important to look at. 1 carat to 2 carats, immediately the price goes up substantially. And if you have larger than 2 carats, then we're looking at 8,000 to 10,000 a carat. That wasn't the case 30 years ago. 30 years ago, people would look at a spinel, and especially if it wasn't the red or the blue, they weren't interested. Nobody was buying it. I remember in 1984, I had just started. I went to a dealer, and he looked at me, and he showed me a very pretty 2 carat purple spinel. I didn't know much about spinel at the time. And he said, look, this I can't sell. Do you want it? I said, yes, I'd love it. Thank you very much. So I still have that stone to this day. Now, yes, it's purple, it's not red, it's not blue, it's not going to be $10,000, but for sure, it's gone up a lot in the last few years. And I'm so happy that, you know, I said, yes, I'd like it, because I could have said, well, no, I don't know what it is. And, you know, what would he have done with it? He would have just given it to somebody else because nobody wanted it in that time. So it's just amazing to see how something can go from literally not being wanted to being very valuable. Sorry, I did want to mention one more thing. Same minds of rubies. I did mention that before, but that's one of the reasons why it's really been mistaken for ruby a lot. So these are all the other colors that we can find spinels coming in. So when we say blue, typically the blues tend to be a bit lighter, or the blues tend to be very gray. They're not the kind of sapphire blue that we love, but today we have new discoveries. We even have a very beautiful blue, which is called cobalt blue. So I'll get to that one in a minute, but these are the standard kind of colors here. So a lot of purples, there's a lot of pinks, there's even orange. It's not that common, but it exists. And the other ones that are not so common is the black, which is very opaque, and yellows and greens. Few people see the yellows and greens. Do they exist? Yes, they exist. All right. Again, how valuable would the yellows and greens be? Not much, because nobody's looking for them. The demand is not there for them. So who knows? Maybe if we buy the yellows and greens now, maybe in 20 years, they're going to be a lot more valuable. We have to see. We never know. But very exciting colors, lots of different colors, more colors than people even imagined that spinel would come in. And here are the good ones, the special colors. And when I say special colors, well, these are more recent. Now, this is called a mahenge, and it's coming from Tanzania. And it is a very vibrant pink. And if you look at the color, the screen doesn't do it justice, because actually, it emits a kind of a neon light when you look at it in a light. It's absolutely fantastic. And these are relatively recent. They've been found in Tanzania in the last few years. You know, people don't realize we find about 80 new species every year of minerals. Now, not all of them are going to end up as being gems, but a great many could be good enough to use as gems. The problem is that if nobody knows they even exist, then how are we going to see them? How are we going to find them? And who's going to promote them? That's the problem, is nobody is promoting them. So it's very interesting to to be in the industry and to have your hand on the pulse of what's coming out of the ground and to see some of the nice things that are actually developing. This one is also very nice cobalt blue. Well, this was first found in Vietnam, in Luc Yen, and it is extremely rare, over 1 carat, and today it is also found in Tanzania. So these are also called mahengi. Before we only called those mahengi, now we call these mahengi. So they are 2 different new spinels that are on the market, and very expensive spinels. So very expensive, you can see. This particular one is 4 carats, and it's $46,200. Crazy prices. Crazy prices. But why crazy prices? Because crazy color. Fantastic color. And also, if you look at that one, it's very clean. All right, we'll get into clarity in a few minutes, but that has also some part to play in the value. So these can go over 10,000 per carat now, the cobalt blue. So usually that's very special. And the Jedi. So what is a Jedi? In Mogok, a small patch, a small area, they found also some very vibrantly pink spinels. And there weren't many found. And somebody turned them Jedi because, I don't know if you watch Star Wars, is it? Yes, they have a kind of an instrument where a wand or something which has a red, very vibrant red, like laser beam.
Lightsaber.
And what is it? Lightsaber. Thank you very much. And so that's the color of that light thing that comes out, which is really spectacular. But I guess you have to be a Star Wars fan to know that. But it comes from Mogok, and this one is also very limited in supply. So anything that is limited in supply is going to command a very high price. All right. Now we wanted to say a few things about clarity because certain gems typically come with a particular clarity. Not all gems are going to come very clean. If you take, for an example, a Colombian emerald, we know that Colombian emeralds always have something inside. And that is called the jardin, the garden. We expect it, and we are very tolerant of it because it is normal. In fact, it's not normal for a Colombian emerald to be clean. Now, some emeralds might be much cleaner. Zambian emeralds today are cleaner, but they were found much, much later. And again, the premium is for the Colombian emeralds because of the provenance, because of the history that goes behind them. With spinels, they are what we call a type 2. And a type 2 simply means that they don't usually come clean. It's not something that when you look at it with your loupe, you will find nothing. So to find one like that, that has nothing in it, is automatically going to raise the price really high. Normally they will look like this. They will have inclusions, but you might not see the inclusions with your naked eye. But all you have to do is pick up a loupe, 10-power magnification, look into the stone, and you're likely to see something. Now, what are you likely to see? Very interesting things in a spinel. This is what we call an octahedron crystal. This is actually the shape in which the spinel grows naturally. When it grows in the earth, it grows in that very beautiful shape. And we can get these little tiny octahedron crystals also inside the gem. And they look so interesting and so beautiful, and the structure of them is so perfect in some cases. We also have other included crystals that look very natural, that look very angular, which is typical of natural material. And we also get fingerprints, which if you were to zoom up on this and make it even bigger, these little fingerprints might be hundreds of thousands of little octahedrons inside in arrangements which are quite interesting. So a lot of gems do have fingerprints, and of course in a type 2 you would expect to see something. So if somebody's selling me a spinel and I pick up my loupe and I look at it and I see it's clean, wow, I know I'm looking at a very high quality stone. If I see something in it with my loupe that I don't notice with the naked eye, that's normal. That's not bad. That's not, oh, it's got an imperfection. Okay, we don't call them imperfections. We call them inclusions. And these inclusions are also helpful because they're able to tell us whether we have natural material versus synthetic material. So it's not a bad thing, but if you get a highly included one, and if you can see those inclusions with your naked eye, without the loop, then it's not a very high quality one. And definitely that should not be at such a high price. So cut. So these are the beautiful octahedrons. Now they don't always come out perfect. All right, in nature, sometimes one or two might come out perfectly, but there's a lot that come a little bit distorted. And whatever happens, when we cut a gemstone, the aim is to maximize the weight from the rough. So they will do whatever they can to make that shape as big from the piece of rough as they possibly can. Especially knowing how valuable this material is, and the red especially. So they're going to be very careful with it. So we get a lot of cushion shapes, we get a lot of ovals, we get a lot of round stones typically. You know, sometimes with the distorted ones, we might get step cuts, and we might get slightly elongated stones, but they're less common. We do get a lot of cabochons. Cabochons are usually when the color is not so good, or maybe it has a lot of inclusions in it. We'll turn it into a cabochon likely, or we could have carvings. And this is the black one. Now the black one, it typically isn't interesting to facet, but one of the things about spinel is it really does have quite nice luster. So when you do put the facets on, you do get a bit of the light return. So although most of the black is maybe carved, we do get some that have this very nice checkered faceting on it. And carat weight. Okay, up to 2 carats. We do have readily available up to 2 carats. But beyond that, anything larger than 5 carats is quite difficult right now to obtain. And especially with the reds and the blues, because everyone's looking for them. So any red and pink in good quality is now getting rare. Lots of people now looking for these. And it all started from the crown jewels. It all started from when they discovered that those 2 large stones in the crown jewels were spinel. Suddenly everybody sat up and said, wait a minute, if spinel looks so much like ruby that even royalty doesn't know the difference, because the royals were pretty convinced. So why don't we buy spinel? We can buy spinel. And that's what really set people buying. So that was back in the 1980s. It was the mid-1980s. And little by little, the price has been going regularly up. So we can see that anything under a carat is going to be about 200 to 500 per carat. Anything from 1 to 2. Again, this is reasonable quality. Is going to be 6 to 1,002, and anything larger is going to be about 8,000 to 10,000. Those are the kind of prices you can expect when you are looking at spinel. So I know it might be some people's favorite, but be prepared to spend a little bit of money if you want a nice quality one. Sources, all these sources. There's a lot of places that the spinel comes from. We can't really say that it's better from here or better from there. You've seen some of the largest ones coming from Tajikistan, and we've seen some coming from Afghanistan, which were really huge. Of course, Burma is always a good source for ruby, and now from Tanzania and even Madagascar, we get very nice ones as well. So really, we see them coming from a lot of different places in the world. Now, let's take a look at...
Before you go on to garnets,
yes.
something interesting, the
yes.
little interesting statistic was that there are more carats of rubies and sapphires being mined than there are carats of spinel being mined each year.
That is true.
I don't know if that reflects on rarity, but certainly in terms of supply, there's less supply of spinel than there is.
It does. The only thing is that because the ruby and the sapphire are more popular, there's still more demand for the ruby and the sapphire. So the prices of ruby and sapphire are still very, very high. But spinel is getting there, and in some cases it has overtaken, a lot of the gems on its way to getting to the top. The other thing I want to mention about spinel, just in case you didn't know this, recently they made spinel a birthstone. It was never a birthstone, and it is the birthstone for August. So if anyone's birthday is now in August, it is going to be your birthstone as well. So good news. All right, let's take a look at garnets. So garnets, birthstone for January. And for the most part, everybody thought that if they were born in January, they had to have a dark red stone. That was typically what, and a lot of people say, oh, I don't like my birthstone. Garnet's not very nice. Look at the variety you can have with garnet. You can even have really cool, interesting stuff like this. So there is a lot of options. We'll look at, of course, color clarity, cut and carat weight, little bit of pricing I'll throw in, and the sources as well. So the thing about garnets is that garnet is a group. Now, what does that mean? Right? We have species and varieties, and the group is when various species have such similarities that we can kind of group them together. So that means that chemical composition on all of those species are so close that we just put them into a group. So every one of those is in a group. So there are typically 6 of them that, 6 species that go into a group. But each one has slight differences. So we'll look at each one of these, and I've got a slide for each one so that you can see what colors they come in. Some of them come in very specific colors, and some of them have more colors than you actually knew. So pyrope. Now this is the most common of all garnets. In fact, this one in the next slide, almandite, also very common. This is the type that is usually the dark red. It's usually the brownish red, as you can see over there. And pricing wise, all over the board. So if you look at the brownish one, it's a 4-carat one. That's quite a big size compared to what we were talking about with spinels. It's only $99. Fantastic. But it's very brownish. Again, remember that color is one of the most important things, and brown is not a good feature in color. In fact, brown is not a color. When something has brown mixed in with it, the more brown, the worse it is, the more the price goes down. That's because the brown makes the color look dirty, right? Brown and gray, 2 things you don't want to find in a gemstone. So this is a much nicer pyrope, and therefore it's a bit more expensive. But again, it's nothing to compare with the spinel. If we had a spinel of this color, wow, we would be paying a great deal. And this is a special one which has more violetish nuances. So when we see more violetish in the gem, and you can see how much violet it's got there. What a difference. This is more of an orangey red. This is the violetish red. So this actually definitely improves the value and improves the quality of the gemstone. So a rhodolite is what we would say is the closest one to a ruby, because the best color for ruby, most people know it's the violetish red, which is what people love to call pigeon's blood. But violetish red, that tinge of violet, makes a huge difference. So you see how the price jumps way up on these things. So, slightly back. Usually dark, typically eye clean. So that means that you're not going to see a lot in them with the naked eye. Okay, so almandite, another one that is enjoyed and appreciated as a birthstone. A little bit on the dark side, not very interesting over here. Again, the price reflects that very clearly. Up here, a little bit nicer. And this one, well, this has got lots of inclusions in it. $25. We can buy an almandite for $25. Yes, you can. In fact, I'm sure there are places online that you can buy anything for like even 75 cents. I've seen stuff going for 75 cents. So the prices are literally all over the place, but what we want is we want good color. This was named from a small city that's in Asia Minor. It's basically from the 19th century. We found very large deposits in Australia. Now those large deposits dubbed this stone Australian rubies. And they actually started to do a lot of mining in that area. And when it was discovered that they weren't rubies and that they were garnets, and suddenly all the mines closed down. Nobody wanted to buy it, they closed everything down. So there's a lot in the name of a gem, right? If it really was a ruby, my goodness, they'd still be going strong. But because it was a garnet, then there was a lot less interest. But does that make it any less of a beautiful stone? What a beautiful stone, yeah? So we can buy something that looks like a ruby that nobody would know wasn't a ruby for a fraction of the price of a ruby. And that's what sometimes we have to focus on, is the beauty of the actual gem and not what it's called or what the material is. Now this is an andradite, and andradite garnet has some very interesting colors with it, and one of the most interesting colors is the demantoid. And that one is a very beautiful green. Sometimes it's a green like peridot, sometimes it's even more of an emerald green, and it really does look fabulous. And one of the things that garnets display, and it's very particular to garnet, is they display a really high luster, a higher luster than other gems. I mean, look at quartz, for example, look at tourmalines. They have much higher luster than that. So the way they catch the light, the way they reflect light back is very special. And they also have a slightly higher dispersion than a lot of other gems. So that makes these stones look very pretty and have that light and fire that we like. Now the demantoid, demantoid simply means diamond-like. These are mainly from Russia. And inside they have a very typical inclusion which is called a horsetail inclusion. It looks like a little spray of a horse when it's running, the tail coming out. And that's how we tell also that they are demantoid. Another one is topaziolite, and this is quite recent. It's not been around a long time. In fact, for me, this is an interesting one because that never existed when I started studying. And the topaziolite comes in yellows, it comes in browns, it comes in oranges as well. So very similar to topaz and quite nice, nothing wrong with it. And is it cheaper? Actually, in some cases, well, topaz is a really cheap stone too. So you'd have to, if you like that color, you'd have to have a look and see and compare which one is the better price. Topaz also comes very clean. It's not likely that you're going to get lots of inclusions in topaz. So topaz is a good alternative to buy, but at least you could buy these as well. And this one, melanite, this one is the black one, which is opaque, and it is a little expensive. And why is it a little expensive? Because it's actually quite rare. It's not an easy one to find. I don't know anyone in Singapore that's got this. It was very popular in the Victorian era. You know why it was popular in the Victorian era? Because Queen Victoria, when her husband died, Prince Albert, she desperately loved him. And of course, when he died, he was quite young. He died when he was about 40. And she went into mourning. And instead of being in mourning for a year, which was the standard, she went into mourning for 40 years. Now in England, what that meant is that you wore black. And usually after a year, you could wear black, but you would have white cuffs and white collar. But she was black for 40 years. And of course, what goes well with black clothing? Not rubies and emeralds and diamonds. So she wanted black jewelry. So anything that was black, like jet that she made very popular, and even this was quite popular in that period of time. This was nice because it had very good luster, and as jet does, jet has very good luster as well. Then we have spessartite. Now spessartite is orange, and spessartites can be very valuable, especially when the vibrancy of that color is there. Typically they were found in the 1800s from a place in Bavaria. That's the first ones were found there. They've been very popular since the 1990s. So this has also taken a long time to become popular, the orange garnets. New deposits were found in Africa, and so these new deposits are producing some very nice vibrant stones. And we're also seeing these which are called the mandarin garnets. And so for mandarin garnets, why are they called that? Well, if you look at oranges, mandarins, you can see why. But the vibrancy also has that neon effect. It's a very strong, vibrant color. So a little bit lighter. These tend to be a little bit darker, but also extremely valuable in both cases. So the orange garnet is one to look for as well. Then we have glossurite garnet. Now, typically it comes in this gooseberry kind of color, which is a very light green color, and not too expensive. Light green, pale green. Remember that if color is important, usually within color, we've got tone and saturation. And the tone usually should be medium. to be at its best, where we can see the color the best. If it's a light tone, it means that white has been added, and that means it's not the pure color. So the minute we come away from pure and it gets lighter, or we add black so it gets darker, price goes down either way. So because this is a light toned, typically a pale color, not a very vibrant color, the price never gets too high. We've also got hessonite. Now hessonite is another orange one, but the difference between this and the spessartite is that the hessonite is usually quite included. We do see lots of eye visible inclusions in it. So if you're going for an orange one, you'd probably want to go for the spessartite better. This is much cheaper. If you want an orange cheap one, the colors can be quite nice. These are common in Sri Lanka and also in some other places we can find these as well. Another good one is tsavorite. Now, tsavorite is very expensive due to the fact that it's a good alternative to emerald. There have been many people buying this instead of emerald, and if you were to have bought these maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you would have probably got them at a very good price. Now, some companies are promoting certain gemstones like tanzanites, like tsavorite, and when they start promoting them, then people start to listen and people start to buy them. The minute people start to buy them, of course, the demand goes up, the price goes up. So that is what happened with tsavorite. It's named after the Tsavo National Park in Africa where it was found. And typically eye clean. So very different from emerald, which we expect to see included. We can get something for the same color, and we can get something that looks really nice and clean, which is not normal for emerald. Rarely treated. That's another important thing. That actually goes for both spinel and garnet. They are rarely treated. Look at how many other gemstones we have that are always treated. I mean, most emeralds are oiled. Even rubies and sapphires are oiled today, believe it or not. So there's treatments that abound, and these are gems that don't have a lot of treatments. And finally, the hydrogroschula. Now, you might say, oh, this is ugly, this doesn't look very nice. Yes, it is a little bit more kind of opaque. It can be translucent in its best quality. Translucent means that the light passes through. This is no light passes through in opaque. But what's interesting is it looks like jade. And that's why people like it. And typically it's this blue-green or a bluish-green color. And it typically has all these little black inclusions in it. So again, it's an interesting one. And if you like jade, it's a nice alternative to jade, which is not terribly expensive, much cheaper than jade. And then we've got uvarovite. So this one here, not many people have heard of it, not many people know about it. It is a garnet, and it's absolutely beautiful. Again, the slide does not do it justice. If you move this around, it sparkles. And why does it sparkle? Because these are hundreds of thousands of little tiny crystals. We call them druzy crystal. And they catch the light as you move it. And it's very, very pretty. Usually this is not sold by carat. It's sold by weight. And it's sold by size, typically. So you see that's a 26 millimeter, only 199. That comes out to about 103 carats in my estimate. Right? Mostly green to blue-green. Some people say, yes, it looks a bit like jade. It doesn't look like jade because the sparkling bits you're never going to find with jade. But it does have, if you look at it with a microscope, you can sometimes find very well-formed dodecahedral and little crystals that are growing on the surface that look very interesting indeed. It is a bit more opaque, which not everybody likes opaque stones. As an opaque stone, we would never be interested in faceting it, so it's never faceted. Usually it's just we carve out the best part of it and you have unusual shapes with it. So lastly, I do want to mention that we also have unique and rare change of color gems, and both spinel and garnet can come in change of color. So what does change of color mean? It simply means that when you look at it in two different light sources separately, first look at it in daylight equivalent, which is a white light source, and then you look at it in an incandescent light source, which is like a yellowish lighting. it can actually change from one color to another. So the spinels are likely to change from this bluish color to this purplish color, very commonly. And here you can also see bluish too, kind of reddish. So it's quite individual, and we do get some that change from yellow to orange. We get some that change from other colors as well. But when you have a change of color, this is an additional special effect that not all gems are capable of. And so that makes these kind of gems also quite unique and quite valuable. So that being said, I do hope that was some interesting information for you all, and that hopefully now you all like spinel better. I'm not going to say run out and buy some spinel because it's super expensive, but there are alternatives. It's a good alternative if you're looking for a ruby or a sapphire. And of course the garnets, there are so many beautiful garnets, and those are really not that expensive. And that's because they're less rare. So hopefully there's something there for everybody to enjoy. Thank you.
Fabulous. So this is just one of our many sessions. If you'd like to join us, we have a really interesting one on emeralds and beryls, to know all of the other colors of the same category that come out. If you want to know more about jewelry manufacturing, we've got a session tomorrow evening on fashion jewelry. We have a session on computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing in jewelry, as well as what happens in the workshop, how they hand fabricate jewelry pieces. And then also we have a fantastic session on pearls. This is on Monday, right?
Yes.
And some sessions coming up on diamonds and design as well. So lots of interesting ones for you to join us for. If you're here or if you're online, you've already kind of learned how to sign up for it, so you're welcome to join us again for these. What I would also like to do is highlight that if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the gemstones and you're interested in a more complete training program, we have an excellent program that is called Gem and Jewelry Trade Secrets. This program is exciting because it covers all of the different gemstones, not just the little ones that we highlight. And we have, again, a short video to share with you on this particular program.
You love gemstones and jewelry, but how much do you really know about the rare and beautiful materials that are in your jewelry box? Join me, Tanja Sadow, for a complete hands-on certification that is guaranteed to change the way you appreciate and buy jewelry. Start your journey by traveling to the source. Learn about gemstone origins, see how gems are mined, and how these extraordinarily valuable materials get to the market. You'll learn how to spot good quality gemstones and how to assess value factors for diamonds, colored stones, phenomenal gems, pearls, organic gemstones, and even jade. This comprehensive course gives you the knowledge and power to take control of your gem purchases if you're a collector or an enthusiast, or your sales process if you're a designer or a jewelry professional. Beyond understanding about the gemstones and common trade practices in the jewelry industry, you will also see and learn about imitations, synthetics, and treatments that are sometimes used to enhance or even to deceive. This popular course takes place in our Gem Vault, where participants are able to see and examine my collection of over 1,800 gems and jewelry pieces, which include rare and valuable specimens as well as common imitations found in the jewelry markets in the region. You will complete this course with a clear understanding of gem facts and will be able to avoid misconceptions that can lead to expensive mistakes when buying jewelry and gems. Here are some of the topics that we will cover in this exciting program. First, we'll learn about the wide variety of beautiful natural minerals and the many misconceptions which abound in this field, as well as how to classify and compare gemstones. Knowing more about these gems, we then learn to evaluate color, discover how clarity types are assessed, and see a wide range of cutting styles available in today's market. Diamonds are the next on our agenda. First, we'll understand the modern diamond trade and then gain in-depth knowledge about the 4 C's, which consists of color, clarity, cut, and carat weight, and which will be most helpful during your next diamond purchase. Next, we'll explore important differences between natural diamonds, synthetic diamonds, and diamond simulants, as well as some tips that will help you in the identification of these gem materials. Pearls are seeing a resurgence in popularity. Our next stop is to discover the varieties of pearls available and their origins, as well as common imitations in the market and ways to identify them. Pearls also have some unique value factors that you need to know about, such as color, luster, shape, make, nacre thickness, and spotting. All of these significantly affect the price of pearls, and knowing them can help you make better buying decisions. Have you heard of asterism, chatoyancy, play of color, aventurescence, adulorescence, iridescence, or even labradorescence? These gemstone phenomena make certain gem materials really stand out from other gems, and knowing how to observe and evaluate these phenomena can help you to select the very best gemstone. Today, in Asia, no gemstone course would be complete without an understanding of jade. This popular material has tremendous cultural significance, but it has also been misunderstood for millennia. Learn about jadeite, or feichui, and nephrite, the two genuine forms of jade, and discover the many imitations available on the market today. Not all gemstones are minerals. Some gems are produced by living organisms. These are known as organic gems and have been appreciated by all cultures throughout time. Discover how gems like amber, jet, bone, ivory, shell, and even coral are used in jewelry today, and what to look out for when buying to ensure your purchases are responsible and sustainable. Our last stop is to understand the difference between imitations, synthetics, and assembled gemstones. Here you'll learn the importance of using the right equipment and techniques to test gems, and will appreciate the complexity of the expert field of gemmology. Like all JDMIS courses, participants in the Gem and Jewellery Trade Secrets class receive everything they need to fully appreciate the gems, exhibits, and jewellery samples. This includes tools like the jeweler's loop and specialized pen lights and tweezers and gem cloths, as well as reference materials for all of the topics covered. Discover the sparkling world of gemstones and jewelry at JDMIS, and see the gemstones in your own collection with a new appreciation. Find out more about our most popular course, Gem and Jewellery Trade Secrets, at jdmis.edu.sg.
So for those of you that are Singaporeans and are interested to join us for this program, you can actually avail of Skills Future training grants, which are for 50 to 70% of the course fees. And then you can also use your Skills Future credits to offset anything that hasn't been used as a grant. So you can actually you can use a lot of your Skills Future funds to be able to help you learn more about gemstones. Something else that's super important with this one, not the lucky draw just yet, that we're really excited with this program because we've switched this year to making all of our programs blended learning, which means that all of the important informational content, how to do something, or what you need to know before you go and buy a particular gemstone or things like that, all of that information is delivered in videos that you have access to for the rest of your life, having been one of our students. And you can always go back and refresh it and see it again. And that's particularly useful for the gemmology course, where you might, 2 years from now think, what do I need to know before I make this next purchase? And it's also really useful for some of the hands-on courses, because sometimes you just can't get enough hands-on skill in class and you need that refresher sometime afterwards. By blended, I mean that half of it is online, half of it is in the class where you're actually handling, looking at, doing interesting things, and getting to use the skills that you've learned.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming tonight. It's been our pleasure to give the talk to you. Please come back for some of the other talks, because we're doing them very frequently now, and you know, we're happy to share with you what we know about what's happening in our industry today. So thank you very much. And goodbye everyone from YouTube.